morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone you're in this morning, whatever time zone you're watching me from. I hope that you are having a wonderful morning, wonderful evening, or wonderful afternoon. Well, we are back at it again, and today we are going to be looking at asset and change management. Asset and change management. This is the aspect that we will be looking at. And as usual, as we look at each concepts in asset and change management, we're going to be looking at scenarios and we're going to be looking at some multiple choices that will help us to get a better understanding. But today's objective, let me just look at the objective for today. It's going to be asset and change management. We're going to look at acquisition and procurement, mobile asset developments, asset management, asset disposal, and decommissioning. We're not going to really perform the lab, but we're going to do change management process, technical implication of change management, and documenting the change management. Right? So those are going to be our objective for today. So this presentation is going to provide you with some deep understanding into asset change management. And we're going to be exploring key concepts and processes and best practices for optimizing organizational efficiency and ensuring business continuity. So that's what we are going to be looking at. But when it talk about um, procurement, acquisition, and procurement, what are we really talking about? So the definition for that is acquisition and procurement involve obtaining the hardware, the software, and the services that align with the organization's security and operational needs. And this process includes your vendors, evaluation, cost analysis, risk assessment, compliance with legal and regulatory requirements. So whenever you are starting a data center or any organization in the cyber world or in any world for that matter, it involves obtaining some level of hardware. So let's zoom into the cybersecurity world. And let's say you're running a data center. What are the hardware and software service that is going to be aligned with your organizational security and operational needs? So it's when we talk about acquisition and procurement, it's the process of obtaining all of these stuff, right? That you're going to need to run the organization. You cannot start an organization, and sometimes you will go to an organization and they are there. But if you're going to start it out, then we need to know um, our vendors that we're going to use. What kind of vendors are we going to reach out to, right? How are we going to evaluate those vendors? Because vendors can be a problem. Do you know that vendors buying from vendors, sometimes there's going to be patch that is going to be needed to update, and you have to make sure that you are using responsible vendors who, when there is a patch come out, they're going to alert you, support you, the person, the customer that bought it from them, the business owner, right? The vendors are very important in buying or obtaining hardware and software from them, because they have to be up to date with the market and what's going on. We have to evaluate their reliability, right? Are they reliable? So we have to know their reliability. We can't just choose anyone without vetting them properly. And to make this even more vivid, like people, places like Microsoft computer stores and these organization, the persons who they buy their stuff from, who Best Buy, buy their stuff from, they have to make sure that these vendors are vetted properly and that the vendors are evaluated properly and audit, because sometimes because they are our supply chain, what happen is that they can bring more problem in the organization and allow us to lose money because of their laziness, or because they are not doing what they're supposed to do. We have to do cost analysis, right? What is the cost to do this? What is the cost if there is a impact on our business? What is the cost should we breached something in our company? What is it going to cost us? Risk assessment. We have to do a lot of that. Compliance with legal and regulatory requirement. So we talk about compliance. What does a payment card industry standard says? And if we breach that as an organization, what is going to be the fine. So when we talk about cost analysis, we also talk about the fine that we can be paid if we don't follow these legal compliance, right? And the regulation that require the cost of not storing the data according to the local requirement. So all of those is what we have to look at before we buy, before we choose a vendor. Okay, so those are very, very important, right? So let's look at it again. Acquisition and procurement involve obtaining the hardware, the software, and services that align with organization security and operational needs. What are some of the hardware and the software we're going to need? Right? What are some of the firewall equipment that we're going to need? What the monitoring equipment? Those are the things that we need that align with our company's security and operational needs, right? Security guard. We're going to need Ballard. We're going to need digital badges. So we ensure that people who are coming in our organizations that they are thoroughly authorized. Fences around the building. What equipment we're going to need? Brackets. We're going to need server trays. They call them our server rackets, our brackets, to put the servers in if we're going to have on-premise data center. What are these hardware and software that we're going to need, and align with the organization security, right? When we are choosing key steps in procurement, right? Needs assessment. Determine what assets, hardware, software are required. So if you're gonna start a data center, you're gonna start offering a product, okay? So let's say that you wanna start a cybersecurity hacking school, right? Or being a cybersecurity consultant or a cybersecurity person who involved in pen testing, and you want to start that company for yourself. Now, if you're going to start a pen testing business or a ethical hacking business, what are the hardware and the software that you're going to need? What are the tools that you're going to need to carry out this kind of business, right? So you got to determine first. You got to do a need assessment. What do I need as it is right now to start the business? What software, what hardware do I require to carry out those kind of business? What are some of them? And you have to put down those on a list, and then you go a little further in the vendor selection, right? So we talk about vendor selection. Who are you going to buy this product from? Choosing a vendor based on security, compliance, and cost effectiveness. Who are you going to buy your equipment from to start the businesses that you want? Who are you going to? Are they in compliance? Are they cost effective? Right? Do they, the vendors, vet the people that they are buying their product from? So we have to select our vendor. When we're selecting our vendors, We have to know, are they reliable? Remember, you cannot choose a vendor that is not reliable, because time after time something is going to break, something is going to need to be done, and you can't choose a vendor that you're just going to escape. You're just not hearing from them, you can't reach out to them, you don't have it, and what it does, it slows up your business, and it gives your business a bad reputation. So you have to look when you are vetting and when you are choosing your vendor for your hardware and your software, that you choose them wisely. You have to vet them properly so that they are trustworthy, they are reliable, they are cost effective, and that they are in compliance. Because if they are not in compliance, they can run you into a breaching problem, right? So it's very important that you, as the person who's going to start the business or working for an organization, a startup organization, or it could be an organization that is in process, but they're going to need the software and hardware to help in the continuity of the business, right? So after you have vet your vendors very well and ensure, based on the local laws and based on the compliance of that region, that they are in compliance, right? And what is the cost? Is it going to cost you more? Are they effective based on what you are buying? Are they giving you a lesser um, reduction because you're buying more in bulk? So you have to look at all of that as a business person, right? So this is what organization, instance, let's take for instance Facebook. Facebook is has its own data center, right? TikTok has its own data center. And for them to start, they have to get their hardware and their software, because they have to look into all of that, and they also have to select their vendors. They didn't make everything for themselves. They got to select some vendors, and they have to ensure that the vendors they're using are in security compliance and that they are cost effective. Contract negotiation, this is a part of the procurement, right? Contract negotiation, it's ensuring service level agreements, SLA, right? And compliance policy are met. So what it ensure the service level agreement, the service level agreement. What is the agreement of the service that we're going to provide, right? So and compliance policies are met. So I have my own compliance. You give me your service level agreement, and everything must be in compliance. Security consideration. This is a big part in the procurement, right? When we talk about security consideration, assessing the risk like the supply chain and the supply chain's vulnerabilities, firmware integrity, third party vendors risk. So when we said supply chain vulnerabilities, is that when you go to um, Microsoft Center to buy a laptop, that laptop came from somewhere to Microsoft, because Microsoft didn't produce them in the store. So when we said security consideration, we're saying what happened between the supply chain and the warehouse, or the destination that they took the things to, right? Or they're taking this stuff to. So in between that time of transporting from the supply chain to the vendor to the ultimate customer, what happened? Because in this phase you can have malicious individual um, breaching the devices, right? And they can cause vulnerability, mean firmware, and they can tamper with the firmware integrity and put a security breach in the firmware. They can alter it, right? And we don't want that. That's when you have some things like logic bombs, you know, what that says that allow certain condition to trigger the logic bomb, which is a kind of a virus, a kind of malware that they will install in the system coming from the vendor or coming from the supply chain, right? Somebody then got into the system and mess it up from the start, right? Back doors are one of them. The back doors, they install back doors in the system before it gets to the customer. So you have to make sure that security consideration, assessing the risk that the supply chain um will bring to you, and they bring their own vulnerabilities. And remember that vulnerabilities are weaknesses in a system that a threat actor can exploit, right? And that can be a problem, because if from the supply chain to the shop to the vendor, if malicious individual get to the supply chain, they can shut down your entire business, because they would have gone into the system and they would have tampered with those devices, those hardware already, right? Or the software, they would have tampered with it. So that's why we're saying assess your supply chain. You have to have an assessing period or assess them before you buy from them, right? So one of the way to assess this is when you get a device, you do what is called a testing. So you test it in a sandbox to make sure that there is no problem, or if you suspect there is a problem, you would have tested in a sandbox. The third party vendors, we have to assess them. Who are you buying your stuff from? Who is who is Microsoft buying their stuff from, right? Which company, what manufacturer are they buying from, and who is in that manufacturer vendor, who is a part of their vendors, right? Where do they get their stuff from? So all of this comes into play when we are doing our procurement. It is very important, because you don't want at the end of the day you're finding out that customers are having malware issues because somebody then get in and alter the integrity of the firmware, right? You don't want to know that, and then there is a recall. Okay, because to know that somebody gets into the firmware is not something that you're probably able to realize immediately, because the firmware is embedded, right, in the equipment, right? So we have to make sure that whoever we are using and whoever they are using, that they are not creating any vulnerability problem for us. Financial, okay, so let's look at an example. A financial institution looking into acquiring new servers must ensure that the vendor provide encrypted storage, meet the PCI DSS compliance for financial transaction, and as reliable support contract, right? So if you start in a financial institution, you're gonna need new server. You must ensure the vendor provide encrypted storage, because you may not have the expertise to do that. So the system that you are buying from them must have this new server must have encrypted storage and meet the PCI, because the PCI is actually the organization that regulates the card company, right? It has its own compliance and all of that for financial transaction, and it must be reliable and support, right? Reliable and support contract. So all of these people that you are going through, you would have had to have some service level agreement with them, you have to have some contract with them, and you have to make sure that you vet and assess them properly. Assess the supply chain properly. Just don't assume nothing is going to happen. People are malicious attackers are very slick, right? They're very smart and they want information. Sometimes they get through the back door, they implement their own malware, they implement their own back door so they can come in. And we want to know that they don't have any entrance in, so we have to do a thorough assessment. And sometimes you probably be the person in the organization that is responsible for all of this, the procurement, the acquisition and procurement of this hardware and software. And you have to understand that this is a serious part of the job in starting the business or adding to what is there. Sometimes hardware or software, or hardware, you might need them, right? Because some are outdated, they're at the end of life and they're no longer needed for the organization. And you now will have to go and acquire these things. You have to purchase them. Sometimes that supply chain is no longer part of that organization, and you have to go find other suppliers, and you have to go through and assess them. You have to go through and see what the company have at hand and what do they need, right? And you have to make sure that they are coming with the things that is not that is going to help your organization. They're coming with the things, the storage, the encryption, and that they're meeting compliance need, and that they are going to help your organization and not slowing it down. So in acquisition and procurement, you have to do strategic planning, understanding the organization needs and developing a comprehensive procurement strategy are critical step in acquiring the right asset at the right time, right? You got to plan. You have to do, you have a planning committee, you have a department head, you have managers who may be involved in this part of the process because there have to be approval to get all of these. So there got to be strategic planning, right, for you to get those, right? So you are getting the right assets and you're getting them at the right time. So supplier don't tell it's coming tomorrow at 10 and then next week Monday you still don't have those. So you have to make sure they are reliable and that they will deliver according to your service level agreement or the contract that you have with them. Vendors evaluation, we talk a little about that. Thorough vendor evaluation, including market research, do your due diligence, ensuring selecting reliable partner for procurement, right? So when you are going to choose your vendor, you got to research them. You got to hear what other vendors, other customers or other people who have used them as their vendors, what do they have to say about these people? And there maybe many times there are lists, there are informations out there that will help you to understand who are these vendors, right? Because one of the things that you don't want to do is to find some vendors that people have bad reviews about, right? And you think, okay, they are cheaper, let me use them. And then when your time come, there is no delivery of your software, right? Your hardware and software, right? And then you lose customers, right? Your reputation is at risk, right? There's an impact on your business because you cannot provide what you have agreed or contracted to do because what some supply chain or vendors didn't show up, wasn't reliable. So do your market research, do your due diligence in researching these vendors that you are about to use, right? So sometimes in some organization you may go and this is your job, right? You are the one getting the equipment, you are the one getting the hardware and the software that is needed to run the business. And you have to be educated as to what to do. right? So do your market research, look at their reviews, test them. So one way you could test your vendor is order something from them, small amount, and see how reliable they are in their delivery, right? And you do that gradually and see how reliable they are. And then you will know if you can trust these vendors. So you must have a list of what you are looking for when you're when you are trying to find vendors. What are some of the things that you're looking for, right? When choosing your vendors to supply your hardware and your software. So let's look at this scenario. Incompatible hardware purchase. That's scenario one. Issue: a company purchased a new workstations, but later discover they lack required security features such as trusted platform module. It is one that is used for encryption, right? So you went out, you were told to purchase some hardware, right? And then you realize after purchasing those new workstations hardware, you discover later that they don't have security features. They don't have trusted platform module. They don't have the module that helps in encryption. What are you going to do? The solution here is to conduct a thorough compatibility and security assessments before purchasing, implementing procurement checklists to ensure security compliance. Because what are you doing with a piece of hardware that don't have encryption? You're in cybersecurity. You have to do hardening, you have to do monitoring, you have to do ensure that the security of somebody's organization is at the top. And you buy a piece of equipment that's don't have encryption ability in it, right? That is that is bad, because that's a vulnerability issue you are creating for the organization. Because now, not only when you get it, you gave it to the customer walk away with this thinking that it has it's a trusted platform, it has encryption, it has everything in it, right? So you have to make sure, as a purchaser, as a person who's going to procure the hardware, that you do an assessment, you conduct a thorough compatibility and security assessment before you purchase them, because you should have already have a list. Let's look at another one. Software license expires lead to downtime. The issue, right? An organization antivirus software license expire because procurement overlooked the renewal date, right? So as the person who is buying, you overlook the date. So here it is. You have a antivirus software license, right? You have a license to um to get these antivirus software, or your vendor have a license, okay, but you went and buy from them and didn't realize that their license were expired, right? Because you, as a procurer, you overlook the renewal date. So they bring the stuff to you, you didn't look at the dates, right? You didn't look at their date. You didn't assess them properly and look at the antivirus license that they have. Yes, they have a license to get all of these antivirus, but is the license up to date, right? So issue is conduct an automated license tracking system to alert procurement team before an expiration done. So this can be on the end of the person who is doing the procurement, right? Who is buying the product, who is sourcing the product. You have to keep up to date, right? Also, your vendor. because the vendor that you buy from can also have an expired license for these stuff, and then they give you an expired antivirus because they didn't check, you didn't check. So you have to have a system in place that checks the expiration date and will alert you. And you have to make sure that you assess that your vendor is doing the same thing, that they're not having all these antivirus license, and they are not checking their end. And you say, okay, I get it from the person who we buy our bulk from, and we don't check anything. We don't have anything in place that will check. So we need to put all of those in place. Let's look at another scenario. Vendor supply chain risk. Issue: a government agent unknowingly procures a network device from a vendor flagged for cybersecurity risk, right? So because now we went and we bought from a vendor supply, the vendor supply chain, right? That's the person who gives the vendors the stuff. Because like I said, remember, Walmart has a supply chain, right? That produce the goods and bring them, and that supply chain has other places they look to. So it's a connecting link. So the vendor supply chain, the one that supplies Walmart, right? What they did, they went out and they buy some products, but those products were flagged. That vendor was flagged, right? For risk, for security breach or for risk. But if we come back over to the cybersecurity aspect, Facebook, we could use Facebook in this case. Facebook company, which is under the government eyes, went and they bought some network devices, and when they realized the people or the vendors that they bought from, they were flagged for security risk. They did something and they were flagged, but because we did not conduct a vendor risk assessment, checking the compliance with regulation like the NIST and the CISA guideline before purchasing. We didn't do that. Are they following the NIST guideline? Who are they following when they are making these products, are producing them? What guideline are they going by? Are we assessing them? Because they are guideline to equipment, they are guideline to network devices that we buy. Are they following those guidelines, or are they just producing and doing, and then when you buy them, you find out that you are in problem because this is not according to the compliance and regulation, right? And that you breach the NIST compliance and regulation. And your whole business can go down because of this. So the issue is a government agency unknowingly procures a network device from a vendor flagged for cybersecurity risk. So the government agency buy it. Let's say Facebook bought it or Twitter bought it, and they didn't do their research, and then only to realize later the people who they bought it from, the vendors, were flagged for security risk, right? Because what? Facebook didn't conduct a vendor risk assessment. They didn't check compliance, right? Are they in compliance? The people who we're buying from, we say, yeah, they are cheap and they are reliable, but are they following guidelines? Let's look at another one. Overpaying for a cloud service. Issue: a company subscribe to a cloud service without evaluated usage needs, leading to unnecessary costs. So not only are they not following the compliance, but we did something wrong. We didn't evaluate the usage need, and this can lead to unnecessary cost. So when we are working for an organization and we are buying all of these services and connecting to all of these platforms for the company good, because we need cloud for storage and all of that, right? Are we checking to see that we're not spending unnecessarily? So we talk about cost effective. Are we spending unnecessary? Solution: perform a cost benefit analysis and choose a scalable pricing model based on the project usage. How many persons are going to your project that is going to use this new product that we're coming out with, this new platform? And then we have to make sure that we choose the price accordingly. Scenario 5: non-compliance hardware purchase. Issue. So the issue is the problem. A hospital purchases an Internet of Things. That's why IoT stand for. A hospital purchased an IoT medical device, but later finds they do not meet the HIPAA security requirements, right? So look at this. Remember that hospital uses Internet of Things, right? We use them in our homes, we use them in different places. And then you bought the equipment, or the IT department bought the equipment to use in the hospital. But later on, they found out that the equipment they bought did not meet HIPAA security problem. With IHB, there is no encryption. There are vulnerabilities in the system that is going to put the patient data at risk. So HIPAA is all about security of securing the patient information, right? And can you imagine? So you have to understand that when you're buying equipment, they must meet security requirement. They must be risk free. They must be able to be thoroughly checked and that they're in compliance with local regulations and laws that govern what devices you can use in our organization, and if this is the devices, what are the compliance requirements that are there that you must follow. So you would get a idea that you just don't buy anything and put in the hospital. They must go along with the HIPAA law. You just don't decide you're buying some devices to go use for your card processing. There are standard compliance and guidelines that is the baseline of buying all those things, right? So you don't breach. So the solution include compliance verification in procurement process and consult with regulatory bodies before finalizing purchase, right? So if you're going to purchase a piece of device, that's going to be an integral part of the Internet of Things in the medical hospital, in the medical area, medical device, then you have to do your consultation. You have to do your due diligence to make sure that that equipment is in accordance with regulation and compliance. Let's look at a poor service level agreement. That's what SLA stand for with a vendor. The issue: a business procures a cybersecurity software but realize the vendor provide poor support, leading to unresolved vulnerabilities. So poor support. When we talk about you buy the software, but you realize there are poor support, right? Leading to unresolved vulnerability. Poor support could be that there is no patching. They don't update it that there is a patch that is out. So there's something that's called 0-day attack, right? Right. And then one of the problem you don't want is that issue in your company. So this vendor, right, must be able to give you the support that you need as a person that is going to run the data center or run the computer department. It cannot be that they have un, they have poor supporting problem leading to vulnerability issue. as an issue come out, as a recall, as a vulnerability come out, as it is known that there's a vulnerability in the system, everybody must be informed. So there got to be strong support, alertness, and constant updating to the people who buy from you, the vendor, right? So you as the individual are responsible for purchasing this software, must make sure the vendor is providing continuous support. And at any point, because the equipment get hold or there is no more support for it, they must let you know, because this is a continuous relationship. Solution include, you could strong service level agreement in the procurement contract specifying responsive time and support availability. So when you are going to buy this equipment or this software, you got to make sure in your service agreement it is stated that you have specific time, the vendors must respond specific time, um the support will be given. So you cannot have a problem and they want to call you 10 business days. No, you have to make that clear in your contract. When you are purchasing these equipment, when are you available, right? What is your specific response time? You got to outline that, and they probably give you their contract as well, right? And you got to make sure that whatever they are doing, that they are always available to respond to your need. Should there be a problem of you trying to connect the device or install the device, who is there to help you? What is their response time? Should something not connecting, who are you going to reach out to? So you got to make sure that your vendors are very much aware that you need response time and you need to know their support availability. We're going to look at a few multiple choice that will help us reinforce this aspect. So take a deep breath. Take a deep breath because we're going to be going through this multiple choice. Okay? So, one, what is the primary goal of the IT procurement? What is the primary goal of IT procurement? Right? Remember, we said procurement is the purchasing or the acquiring of the software and the hardware that are needed for the runnings of the organization or for the continuity of the organization. Is it A, to acquire the most expensive technology available? B, to ensure IT purchase align with business needs, security, and compliance? C, to eliminate all vendors and develop in-house solution? D, to purchase technology without considering the security risk. And we know that the answer would be B, so because one of the goal of the IT department in buying hardware and software, it is to ensure IT purchase aligned with business needs, security, and compliance. You have to bear that in mind. The need must be aligned with the business. The buying, sorry, the buying must align with the business need. And the security and compliance is a big thing you have to consider when purchasing as an IT personnel. Number two, what should an organization consider before selecting a vendor for IT procurement? Before you select the vendor, what are some of the things that you need to consider? Is it A, the vendor security posture and compliance standard? Is it B, the vendor reputation and customer support availability? C, effective cost effectiveness and total cost of ownership? D, all of the above. And we would use all of the above because we said when we are vetting our vendors, we must ensure that they are in good security posture and compliance standard. What standard of compliance are they following for a medical device? Right? Are they following HIPAA compliant? What standard are they following when we're buying a piece of pen testing appliance? Who are they following when if it's a financial company and getting device, right? Are they following the PCI, right? What are they following? And we said the vendor's reputation and customer support availability is important. You cannot buy from a poor vendor. You cannot buy from a vendor that their support is choppy. They they support when they feel like, okay? Cost effectiveness and total cost of ownership, right? You got to look at all of that. So we will say it's all of the above. Number 3, which of the following is an example of poor procurement practice? Very poor, right? Conducting a risk assessment before purchasing IT asset, choosing a vendor without verifying the compliance requirement, evaluating multiple vendor based on security, support, and cost, using a procurement checklist to guide the purchase decision. And we would say B is the answer, choosing a vendor without verifying the compliance requirement. Those are reckless ways of doing business. But for the others, we will need to do those. But choosing a vendor without verifying their the compliance requirement, you're trying to run into some problem. So you have to verify them, okay? It's very important. Extremely important that you verify your vendors. Next question. A company is looking to procure rather a cloud service for data storage. So a company is looking to procure a cloud service for data storage. What is the most important security consideration? What would you take into consideration as you are trying to purchase the cloud service for data storage? Is it A, whether the cloud provider offer free upgrades? B, B, the provider's data encryption and compliance certificate? C, the provider's logo and branding appeal? D, the provider's ability to offer unlimited storage. So we would go with B, the provider's data encryption and compliance certification. Why? Because if you're going to store customer sensitive data in the cloud, you got to make sure that they have encryption. It has encryption ability and compliance certificate, right? So certificate, I guess some point in our lesson we're going to talk about certificate of trust, right? And all of that, that they are trustworthy, they are in compliance, and that they are providing encryption according in their storage. So you don't want to use a cloud that don't have any encryption. It means that your raw data is moving over the network, and anybody can see your information, right? Whether they're at risk, whether they are moving over, whether they are in use, because you're going to use the cloud, and you have to ensure that while you're using the cloud, that your data is protected. While you are sending the information, your picture from your cloud to me, that it is encrypted, right? So you have to make sure there are data encryption and compliance. Number 5, what should be included in an IT procurement contract to ensure long-term vendor accountability? What should be included in an IT procurement contract to ensure long-term vendor accountability? Right? So, is it A, service level agreement defining uptime and support terms? B, the vendor's preferred method of communication? C, an agreement that price will never change? D, a provision that allows ultimate feature requests. No? So we're going to use A. So we should have a service level agreement defining uptime and support terms. So we have to make sure that the vendor know that this is our requirement, and what are your uptime and all of that. How fast are you going to respond to us? You know? So we have to make sure we get all of that in our contract, right? So we as the the purchaser, that we are not losing money because somebody is rather careless on their end. Number 6, what is the key benefit of evaluating the total cost of ownership in an IT procurement? What is the key benefit of evaluating the total cost of ownership in IT procurement? A, it ensures the purchased product is always selected. B, it helps in understanding the long-term costs, including maintenance and support. C, it eliminates the need for vendor negotiation. D, it focuses only on the initial purchase cost. But we would say it's B, it helps in understanding the long-term costs, including maintenance and support, because we're going to need that from our vendor, right? 7, an IT purchases a new network equipment but later realize it's incompatible with their existing infrastructure. What procurement steps was likely missed? So number 6 is just a bonus question. If you the owner, the cost of ownership is just a bonus there for you to think about, and you can read about it. Number 7, an IT team purchased a new network equipment, but later realized it is incompatible. And what did we say when we are doing procurement? That we must make sure it is in alignment with the business need. Remember, we said that it must be in alignment with what the business wants. So here is the problem. The team purchased a network equipment but later realized it is incompatible with their existing infrastructure. What procurement step was likely missed? A, performing the testing. B, security compliance verification. C, compatibility assessment. D, end user training. So they lack compatibility assessment because they should have known, they should have done their assessment of their organization and know that the equipment that they need must align with the business need. It must be compatible. When we say align, it must be compatible. It must be able to work for the organization. So that's where they went wrong. They did not do a compatibility assessment. Okay, next question. A healthcare company is procuring an IoT medical device. What regulation should they ensure the device comply with? Is it A, the GDPR, B, IPA, C, OSOX, D, the PCI DSS, and we know that the hospital deal with HIPAA. Once they're buying any equipment, any device for hospitals and all of that, the governing body is HIPAA. So they must know that they're following HIPAA rule. Okay, do you understand that concept that they must be following the HIPAA rule? Because this has to do with hospital. If it was a card company, then we would say is a PCI DSS. They are the regulatory body for financial cards industry and for the card industry, right? Number 9, what is the primary reason organization conduct a risk assessment before purchasing IT asset? Why the organization must do a risk assessment? Is it A, to ensure employees like the product design? B, to identify potential risks, vulnerability, and compliance risk? C, to see if the product comes in different colors? D, to avoid consulting IT professional during the procurement process. And we do a risk assessment to identify potential security vulnerabilities and compliance risks. That is why we do that, to identify potential security vulnerability and compliance risk. That's why we do a risk assessment. What are the vulnerabilities? And are they in following the compliance and regulation? So number 10, what is the purpose of conducting a vendor due diligence process before IT procurement? Why do we do our due diligence when we're trying to find a lawyer? Why do we do our due diligence? Or sometimes when we're trying to find a doctor, we do our due diligence. We want to know which is the best social media platform. We do all of that. What is the best this to do? What is the best doctor on it? So we do our due diligence and we research them, right? So in your IT department, you have to do the same thing. You have to do your due diligence in researching your vendors before you purchase from them, because some vendors are very slick. They may come up once and they're up, and by the time they get everything, they're gone. They drop off the radar. And you don't want to do that. So you got to do, and it's something they go around and do and probably come under different names sometimes. So is it A, to ensure the vendor offers free software trials? Is it B, to verify the vendor security practice and financial stability and compliance history? C, to determine if the vendor has attractive marketing material. D, to bypass internal security approval process. And we do our due diligence um, in looking up the vendor, because we want to verify the vendor's security practice, financial stability, and compliance history. Because we don't want, when we go, we hear that, listen, we do some further research and we find out this vendor is always doing this. Have you ever looked at some reviews? And when you look at the reviews, you realize that those particular businesses, they constantly do that thing. They are they are not delivering the product on time. Look at some reviews. The products are not delivered on time. So if you don't do your due diligence, if you don't look and assess and make sure that this vendor is who they say they are, and they're not always in bankruptcy, that they are verified security wise, the vendor security practice is right, you have to look at it. If there are other companies that are offering the same business like you, who do they use? Have they ever used this particular vendor? Is there any problem with this vendor? Do they have good financial stability? Because if they don't, it's likely that they're going to run off with your money, because they're always in financial problem, or they're in bankruptcy. You got to find that out. What is the financial stability of that vendor? And compliance, are they known for breaking compliance? Are they always in in court because they broke the compliance? Are they always flagged because they're not following compliance, right? This company, does their customers constantly returning their hardware or their software because they're not in compliance? Remember that hospital equipment, when we bought to realize that it is not in compliance with HIPAA, or we bought it and realized there's no encryption in it. Are these issues? And then we have to look at those and decide, am I going to use this vendor? Remember that at the end of the day, that vendors, right, are very important in the purchasing of your equipment, your hardware, and your software that you need for your organization. It is extremely important, and you must take all of those in consideration when you are purchasing from any vendor. Do your assessment, do your due diligence. Make sure they are who they say they are. Make sure that they're following compliance. Okay? And that is this concept that we are at today. So we are going to be moving in our other concept um, in this aspect of our objective. Okay? So let's do a quick run through of what we did. So today we looked at procurement, acquisition and procurement, and we said that it involved obtaining hardware and software and services that align with an organization's security and operational need. And this include your vendor, your cost analysis, your risk assessment, and your compliance with legal and regulatory requirement. So we are at acquisition and procurement, and the next one we're going to look at is mobile asset deployment. Okay, so that's the next one we're going to look at. If you have any question, don't be afraid to reach out and ask.